Well, it's a very serious issue, and it's an issue that needs to be discussed broadly in the public, but particularly in Parliament, and I felt that the Senate was a good place to begin. It's something which is beyond a particular party. It is above politics, and it needs to. One of the advantages of doing it in the Senate is that we don't have to have legislation. We can simply have a debate and have a discussion about it. I think the government's approach is far too narrow. Parliament is composed of the Senate and the House of Commons, and you can't look at the Senate without considering the impact that it would have on the House of Commons. And the relationship between the two is very important. So to look at it in isolation, simply looking at the Senate, is the wrong way to go, in my view. I think that the Conservative government's approach to Senate reform or to parliamentary reform is far too narrow. Parliamentary reform is an important issue, and it involves not only the Senate and the House of Commons, but the relationship with the provinces. And so I think that at the very outset, and not at the end of the process, our constitutional partners, the provinces, have to be involved in the discussion. But I'm absolutely in favor of parliamentary reform, but it has to be a broader reform agenda than simply looking at the Senate. I hope the inquiry will initiate a broad debate not only in the Senate, not only in Parliament, but in Canada at large, to talk about the role of Parliament and the relationship between the Senate and the House of Commons. Back in 1867, when Parliament was when Canada was formed, it was a very deliberate approach to have an elected House of Commons and an appointed Senate. And there was a lot of time and effort and discussion that went into the creation of that type of Parliament and deciding how powers would be allocated between the federal government and the provincial government and between the two houses of Parliament. And so I think it's certainly high time that we had a look at that to see whether the Parliament that was designed in 1867 is the right Parliament for the 21st century. But you have to do it very carefully. Constitutions are by their very nature difficult to change, and we shouldn't make one change without considering the impact that that change would have on the other our partners in Confederation, the provinces, and on the other House of Parliament. So it's a complicated process, and it should be, but we need to start somewhere. And I think that this debate in the Senate, which I hope will attract senators from both sides of the chamber, and then I hope will also encourage our colleagues in the House of Commons to discuss the issue, and then we'll move it out more broadly into the Canadian public at large. And that's the way that you modernize parliamentary institutions. You don't do it by having one person dictate what those changes will be, even if that person is the Prime Minister.